A mountain footpath after rain. Mud squelches under boots and fog rolls in, hiding the trail ahead but muffling sounds of life around them. At a bend, a woman waits for a man she's never met before, holding out a bundle wrapped in cloth. The man approaches cautiously, his footsteps loud against the quiet landscape. He stops short when he sees her, wondering why this stranger has appeared here, waiting just for him. "Here," she says simply, handing over the parcel without preamble or explanation. "For you." He accepts it gingerly, feeling its weight in his hand but not looking inside yet. Her presence is enough to convey what's necessary. No words are needed between them. She waits until he has studied her, offering for a moment longer before she turns and disappears into the mist. He watches as her figure grows fainter, her pace steady and sure despite the path ahead being shrouded in uncertainty. Only then does he unwrap the bundle to find inside an old, well-worn map of this very mountain range, marked with precise notes in faded ink but oddly clear directions to spots no modern guide would know. No words are written explaining why it's given or what secrets it holds. Just that knowledge exists and now belongs to him. With a nod, he tucks the map back into its protective wrapping, securing it tightly around his waist before continuing on his journey alone once more. The path splits ahead but her decision remains clear. Go left toward higher peaks, where rare herbs grow and ancient ruins rest undisturbed by modern hands. This is his direction now. As dawn breaks over the mountainside hours later, he stops to set up camp at an overlook with a panoramic view. From here, he unfolds the map and begins tracing paths with a finger, lost in thought as much as navigation. Each line drawn leads him deeper into areas untouched by human feet for centuries perhaps. The night before seems distant now. All that matters is what lies ahead under his boots and eyes. And yet, at some point while staring out over the silent wilderness stretching below, he finds himself smiling softly, acknowledging something profound about where this journey began, and how it continues to unfold without him needing to hold on to its origins too tightly. As darkness falls again, wrapping everything in a cool embrace of shadows, all that's left is the soft sound of his breath and the distant hoot of an owl.
You're listening to the Empty Teahouse. The moonlight caught the edges of the map spread out on his lap, lighting a trail toward an old city's quiet alley, evening shadows lengthening and merging around her as she waits for her grandson's return.
In the quiet alley between two clay walls of an old city, evening shadows lengthen and merge. A grandmother stands in front of a small wooden door, her fingers absently tracing patterns on the faded green paint. She waits for her grandson to return from his studies at the temple school. The air is heavy with jasmine from nearby bushes. The alley echoes with soft footsteps. A young man approaches. He pauses near the grandmother but says nothing, instead studying the weathered tiles underfoot and the cobwebs in dark corners of doorways. She watches him for a moment before turning her head slightly to see who else might be passing by. The boy's face is obscured by shadow, and she cannot read his expression. "Would you like some tea?" the grandmother asks finally, though it feels as if she has been sitting there all day without moving. He looks up at her then nods silently, stepping into a small courtyard behind her door. A single oil lamp flickers on the wall beside an old table with a cracked green top. The light catches tiny motes of dust floating in from open doors. The grandmother moves slowly across the cobbled ground to fetch cups and a pot that steams gently over a low flame. She places everything quietly before them, then sits down herself, her hands resting lightly on either side of the tea. Neither speaks as they sip, steam rising between them like misty whispers in the cool air. Outside, the night deepens and more shadows come to life around them, casting intricate shapes against the walls. The boy's eyes drift from his cup to observe these fleeting patterns, their edges softening into obscurity with each breath of wind. He feels a peculiar calm settle over him, a feeling he can't quite name or understand. After what seems an eternity, perhaps just moments, the grandmother shifts slightly in her seat. She reaches across the table and places one hand on top of his, holding it there for longer than necessary. A soft warmth spreads through both their bodies as if sharing something intangible yet deeply felt. When she lets go, the gesture leaves them both silent once more. The young man stands up, turning to leave without a word or look back. As he walks away, however, something catches his eye: an old wooden stool by the door that seems newly painted and surprisingly sturdy for its age. He stops, hesitating briefly as if remembering an afternoon spent helping the grandmother paint just such a piece years ago. Before stepping out of sight entirely, he turns one last time to meet her gaze through the darkening alley. She smiles faintly, nodding slightly in acknowledgement or perhaps reassurance. With that small gesture, all unspoken questions seem momentarily answered between them. The sound of his footsteps fades into silence as if carried away by an unseen current. The grandmother watches him go, her eyes lingering on the spot where he disappeared before turning back inside, shutting the door quietly behind her.
The lantern flame swayed once, then steadied again, just as Mr. Chin finishes preparing a bowl of steaming noodles inside his small booth where warmth lingers from the charcoal stove that simmers pots of soup and steamed buns.
A light snow had fallen overnight, blanketing the wooden stalls along the narrow lane. Near the end stood a noodle stall run by Mr. Chun, who had been making and selling noodles for over 40 years. The air was crisp, but inside his small booth, warmth lingered from the charcoal stove that simmered pots of soup and steamed buns. Mr. Chin's hands moved with practiced ease, rolling out dough and cutting it into thin strands, which he then tossed deftly into a bubbling pot. Tonight, he felt more tired than usual. His old joints ached in the cold air as he worked steadily, but there were no customers to greet him. Suddenly, footsteps crunched on snow outside. A young woman appeared at the entrance, her breath visible in the chilly night air. She wore an old coat that hung loosely over her shoulders and clutched a small bag in one hand. Her cheeks were pink from the cold wind. "Good evening," she said softly, looking around as if uncertain why she had come here. Mr. Chin straightened up from his work, recognizing her despite the faint lamplight. "You've been by before, haven't you?" He greeted her kindly. She nodded slightly, smiling. "Yes, I have. What can I get for you tonight?" Her eyes wandered to a pot of simmering soup, then back to him. "I don't know what I need right now." Her voice was hesitant and soft. Mr. Chin knew the signs well. This wasn't her first visit under similar circumstances. He reached into his drawer, pulling out 2 small bowls and setting them before her on a wooden tray. "Here, have these." The soup was warm and soothing as she sipped it slowly, letting its warmth seep into her bones. "Thank you," she said again, looking at the empty bowl in front of her. Mr. Chin watched her for a moment, then turned back to his work without comment, cutting noodles with precise movements. The rhythmic clack-clack of scissors against wood filled the quiet space between them. The woman finished her soup and sat quietly for some time longer before she stood up. She placed a small note next to her empty bowl on the counter where Mr. Chun kept coins and change. He noticed the amount was more than what he would have charged, but made no move to touch it. When she left, the door closed softly behind her, leaving only the sound of clacking scissors and his own breath in the stillness. Mr. Chun wiped down the counter one last time before shutting up shop for the night. As he extinguished the charcoal stove, a single noodle floated free from a bundle on the cutting board. He picked it up gently with trembling fingers and placed it carefully outside the door, letting it drift into the snow. The light went out inside, casting shadows through the paper windows, but no one else was there to see it fall silent.
Somewhere down the lane, a snowflake landed softly on the cobblestones, falling to rest in a country market at noon where the sun hangs high over fields stretching into the distance as people move around stalls piled with fresh produce.
A country market at noon. The sun hangs high and still over a patchwork of fields that stretch into the distance. People move in hives around stalls piled with fresh produce of piles of apples, heaps of carrots, mounds of potatoes. A woman stands before an old beekeeper, her hands clasped tightly around the handle of a large basket full of eggs from her chickens. She eyes him closely, as if she's looking for something familiar in his weathered face. His beard is white and unkempt, and he wears a faded brown apron over a shirt that was once blue but has turned gray with age and washing. He looks up at her, eyes steady behind small spectacles perched near the tip of his nose. "Morning," she says to him after a moment of quiet between them. The sound of vendors hawking their wares reaches her ears and waves. There's no other noise that can cut through this market's hum except for the soft murmur of the wind stirring the dry leaves on the ground. She steps closer, lifting the lid from one end of her basket to show him her eggs. He nods once and moves a finger along his rows of jars filled with honey. He picks up two and twists off their wax seals, setting them down in front of her side by side. Clear golden liquid and deep amber syrup swirled together. She smiles softly at the sight, eyes tracing over the surface tension between the liquids as if she's trying to read a story written there. "Fair trade," he says. "Take what you like." Her hands linger for a moment before lifting out two jars, her fingers brushing lightly against his as they pass each other. She tucks them into the basket carefully and closes it with another soft click of its lid. A slight breeze ruffles her hair, she pushes it back behind her ears. The beekeeper watches her leave, eyes following the sway in her steps until she's out of sight down a winding path lined with wildflowers. He picks up his honeycomb brush again where he left off, slowly sweeping through each row to clean and prepare them for next season. As noon stretches into afternoon, the market begins to empty out around him, but the beekeeper stays put, lost in the rhythm of his work. A few more jars are sold, a handful of small talks with passing strangers who stop by for no other reason than to enjoy a quiet moment among the busy bustle. When there's nothing left to do and nobody left to talk to, he sits back on an old stool beside his cart, staring out at the fading sunlight. A young boy approaches, holding a jar that he seems to have picked up somewhere during his day's adventures in the market. "Is this yours?" asks the child, voice high-pitched with curiosity and excitement. The beekeeper looks down at the small jar cradled gently in the child's hand, its label worn but still readable. "Yes," he says quietly, reaching out to take it back. The boy holds on for a moment longer, as if wondering what else might happen, then lets go with a smile and runs off into another part of the market. The beekeeper places the jar down next to him, uncapped so that any leftover honey can be cleaned up later. With his fingers tracing over an old scar above his left eye, a reminder from years ago when he used to chase after stray bees in summer, he lets out a soft sigh and leans back against the stool's wooden slats. Just as quickly as she appeared earlier, another woman comes into view, this time younger with dark hair tied back loosely, and stops at his stall. She's carrying something wrapped up carefully under her arm. He nods to greet her again, but this time it feels more than just a casual hello, there's an unspoken understanding between them. She sets down her package and unwraps it slowly, revealing the familiar sight of two jars inside. Clear golden liquid and deep amber syrup swirled together. She looks up at him with the same kind of soft smile he saw earlier in the day from a different woman, now sharing a silent acknowledgement without needing to say a word. He reaches out for the jar on his left, lifting it carefully from her hands as she passes them over. The exchange is brief and simple, but it feels like more a continuation of something that began long ago between strangers whose lives are only connected by this moment's transaction. She turns to leave then, just like before, walking away into a day where nothing else matters beyond the here and now captured in these small gestures between two people. He watches her go, back straight and posture firm against the fading light of evening, until she is gone from sight around another corner of the market. He closes up his cart slowly, packing away jars and brushes neatly for tomorrow's work. As he does so, a stray bee finds its way into the stall. It circles once, twice before settling down onto one of the empty jars with a soft hum. The sound hangs there in the quiet, lingering on like a thought left behind, until it too fades out as night falls over the market square.
A lone cricketer chirped as night settled over the market, its sound blending seamlessly into the quiet hillside terrace after a storm lay bare and quiet, raindrops clinging to every blade of grass in the early morning light.
The hillside terrace after a storm lay bare and quiet. Raindrops clung to every blade of grass, glistening in the early morning light. A young scribe named Jean was sitting on the edge, notebook open but untouched. His hands were still from the night before, when he had transcribed an important letter for his master, the village headman. Now as dawn broke he felt a heaviness within him, a question unasked. Behind him footsteps crunched through the wet earth. It was May, the orphan boy who swept the courtyard at the temple, and now worked for Jin's family in their home nearby. She carried a basket with bread and dried fish wrapped in leaves. "Morning," she said softly, setting down her load beside Jean without fanfare. He nodded back to her. "You should eat," she offered, tugging out a piece of flatbread from the leaf wrapping. "Your breakfast's getting cold." Jean picked up the bread and took a bite. It felt dry but welcome. May didn't speak as she sat down next to him, knees drawn up close. She had brought food for Jean after he lost his mother recently. Her father wasn't there anymore either. They watched the horizon turn from dark blue to pink. The sun peeked over the hills and shadows began to recede into the earth. May finally broke the quiet with a question as direct as the look she gave him. "You know your letters?" "Yes," he said simply, nodding toward his notebook where he'd been trying to sketch out words instead of write them. "I used to dream about writing things down too," May whispered after a moment's reflection. "But then I started seeing how much more there is than just the marks on paper." Jean glanced at her but didn't look away, meeting her eyes as she continued. "When you sweep the floor in the temple, do you notice the dust falling back to the ground?" He shook his head, taken aback. His notebook felt like a weight against his chest. "Noticing everything is different," May said with a smile that seemed more for herself than him. She stood up and held out her hand, offering Jean hers too but not insisting. He took it after a moment, the dry bread now just a memory on his tongue. "Let's go home, shall we?" The two of them walked back down to the village together, steps in sync without ever needing to match pace deliberately. The air was cool and clean around them, carrying no words but holding all their thoughts.
The morning light caught the edges of the leaves they walked past, casting brief shadows that danced ahead of them as silence settled over the dawnlit terrace. The kettle cools at the empty tea house. Until tomorrow.